the divine organizing intelligence, the God of which you are a piece, a spark, a fragment, had a knowing about everything and how it ought to be. And there was nothing for you to worry about, there was nothing for you to do. In the recovery movement, we call this letting go and letting God, don't we? Letting go and letting God. We come in, we're born into this world, and we take on something called ambition. And ambition is the time in our adult life, or in our child's life, when we develop this, what Muktananda called the false self. And most of us live our lives on the basis of this false self. And this false self is really an idea. It's an idea that's called the ego. You can't find it because it's virtually the cause of all of our problems. I mean, I have a quote at the chapter on ambition. From Ramana Maharshi. He said, all unhappiness is due to the ego. With it comes all your troubles. If you would deny the ego and scorch it by ignoring it, you would be free. You would be free. And that freedom from the ego is something that I have worked on in my life, to a point now where all I see anymore, especially after studying the works that I've been reading from here tonight, about knowing what it means to be an initiate and live from that higher self, that what I see in everyone that I encounter now is the unfolding of God. I don't see separation. I see a kind of thing that unifies us in such a spectacular way, and it's like, it's one of the hardest things for us to get. Ego, E-G-O, edging God out. E-G-O. So we're born. God, the Tao, divine mind, soul, spirit, whatever you call it. You can be an atheist and you still know that there is some kind of an invisible intelligence that allows things to be. It's as hard for me to contemplate a watch without a watchmaker as it is to contemplate a universe without a creator, for me. I just can't imagine a simple little thing like a watch existing without a watchmaker. And imagine the complexity of a universe which has trillions and trillions of pieces to it, without some kind of a creative force in the universe, whatever you want to call it. The opening line of the Tao Te Ching says, the Tao that can be named is not the Tao. So the first thing you do when you put your name on something, you've lost it. When you're speaking from the higher self, the place that moves from ordinary up to here, because you've got the thing and you've got the name for it. Two separate things. But we're talking about oneness, and we've reduced it to two-ness. It's like taking the concept of zero and trying to divide it and tell you what half of zero looks like. It's not possible. Zero doesn't allow for division, does it? Nor does God, or soul, or spirit, or higher consciousness. It doesn't allow for it. So you were born, and your parents looked at you and said, great work, God, this is terrific. We'll take over from here. And in the process of taking over, what was created in you, which was created in them, was this false self. It isn't too great a stretch for me to say that if everything that we needed for the physical journey was handled for us in the moment of our spark of moving from non-being to being, if everything that we needed in that tiny little infinitesimally small spark of life, you could put 1 billion of them on the head of a pin, that's how small it was, that everything you needed, there was a future pull in there, and everything you needed for this physical journey was handled there for you. And look around you, it was. Your height, your weight, your eye color, virtually everything about you as a physical being was handled for you. There was nothing for you to do. It's not that great a stretch for me to say that if everything that you needed for the physical journey was handled, that everything you needed for the rest of the journey was handled in there as well. If you just keep your hands off of it, if you just let it be, the Beatles had it right. Let it be. Let it be. Let it be. Let it be. there will come an answer. Let it be. When I find myself in times of trouble, Mother Mary says to me, whisper words of wisdom, let it be, let it be, let it be. Just let it be. Just let it be. But we don't. Non-interference, letting go, letting God, allowing.
There comes a moment, often quietly, when the soul whispers through the cracks of our pretending. It doesn't scream, it doesn't demand. It simply sighs, a long, tired breath beneath the surface and says, I can't keep performing anymore. And in that sacred breath, life begins. Not the life others have rewarded, not the one that garners applause, but the real one, the one that asks nothing but truth. You were not born to perform. You were not placed here to impress. You came from the divine, not to be decorated by society's ribbons, but to remember the sacredness of your breath, your being, your boundless presence. And yet, we grow up in a theater, not the kind with curtains and stage lights, but one more subtle, more exhausting. The theater of fitting in, the drama of being enough, the act of being who they expect instead of who you are. And the tragedy is, we get good at it, too good. We learn our roles so well that we forget they are roles. We smile on cue, we nod when we disagree, we speak when silence is the soul's truth. We become who the world will accept and betray the very spirit that made us alive. We lose the joy of simply being. We bury our spontaneity beneath scripts handed down from generations of unconscious survival. But you are not here to survive in someone else's story. You are here to live in your own truth. Not the truth they taught you, not the one you rehearsed to avoid rejection, but the raw, honest, wild truth of your soul. The part of you that doesn't care if they understand it, only wants to be free. And freedom does not arrive with applause. It arrives in surrender. It arrives the moment you say, I no longer need to be liked in order to love myself. How long will you delay your liberation waiting for permission that was never theirs to give? The world cannot validate what it does not understand. And it will never fully understand a soul that has stopped performing. Because a soul that lives, truly lives, is unpredictable, inconvenient, and powerful. It no longer bows to comfort or expectation. It breathes truth, even when it shakes. There is a sacred rebellion in authenticity. It is not loud. It is not angry. It simply refuses to pretend. It walks into rooms and no longer shrinks. It speaks softly, but with the force of eternity behind every word. It smiles, not to please, but because joy overflows. And sometimes it doesn't smile at all, because realness isn't always cheerful. Sometimes it's raw, sometimes it's tears, but it is always real. And the most spiritual thing you can do is be real. Not perfect, not polished, not put together, just real. You don't have to glow to be divine. You don't have to sparkle to be sacred. You only have to stop abandoning yourself in the name of acceptance, because there is no amount of applause that will fill the void left by your own self-betrayal. That emptiness you feel, that quiet ache, it's your soul knocking on the inside saying, let me out, let me breathe, let me live. And it will keep knocking. Not to punish you, but to wake you. Because the truth of who you are has waited long enough behind the mask of who you perform to be. And the longer you wear the mask, the heavier it becomes. At first, you think it protects you. But eventually, you find it is the very thing suffocating your aliveness. Your life is not a stage. It is a sacred unfolding. And you, dear soul, are not a performer. You are the presence, the light itself, the being behind the act, the witness beneath the mask. You are not what you show. You are what you are when there's no one to show it to. And that self, the one behind the scenes, that is where God lives. That is where peace breathes. That is where freedom begins. Let go of the script. Burn it, if you must. Every line you memorized to be worthy, release it. Every costume you wore to be accepted, shed it. Every scene you reenacted to be safe, step out of it. The stage is not your home. The truth is, and truth does not need lighting or lines or validation, it only needs your permission. And that permission is the most holy act of love you will ever offer yourself. Because the moment you say, I will not perform today, is the moment you return to your center, to the stillness that does not need proof, to the silence that does not need volume, to the self that does not need applause. You return to being. And in being, you remember that all your striving was never necessary because you were already whole. You've spent a lifetime trying to earn a seat at a table you were born to build. You've twisted your light to fit into shadows that never deserved you. And now, the invitation is clear, not to hustle harder, not to prove yourself louder, but to come home. Come home to the self that doesn't audition. Come home to the you that was never a role, never a projection, never a mirror of someone else's need. The you that simply is. And when you arrive there, when you sit quietly inside your own presence without performing, you will feel a sacred unfamiliarity. Not because it is foreign, but because it has been so long forgotten. It is like walking into a childhood home after years away. Everything looks smaller, quieter, simpler, and yet every corner is laced with memory. Every silence pulses with recognition. You realize you didn't need to reinvent yourself. You only needed to stop abandoning what was already true. The universe does not ask you to be impressive. It asks you to be aligned. Life does not reward the pretender. It responds to the authentic. And the authentic does not push it, allows, it does not strive. It flows. When you stop performing, you stop chasing. And when you stop chasing, you start receiving. You begin to experience life not as something to conquer, but as something to receive with reverence and grace. Because life is not a competition, it is a communion, a sacred relationship with the now. And the now is uninterested in who you're trying to be. It wants the real you, the unguarded, unscripted, unmasked presence that breathes without needing to impress, the version of you that would speak the truth even if your voice trembled, the one who laughs without needing an audience, who cries without needing permission, who shows up as they are, not as they're supposed to be. You are not a curated image. You are not a walking resume. You are not a list of achievements or failures or opinions dressed in emotional makeup. You are a living essence, untamed and untouchable, before they told you to sit still and look good, before they taught you to smile even when it hurt, before they convinced you that being you wasn't enough. And every time you remember that, something divine opens within you. You begin to sense it in small moments, the sacredness of not pretending. When you say no without justifying it, when you wear silence like a prayer instead of filling it with explanations, when you walk away not to punish but to protect your peace, when you let people misunderstand you, because truth no longer needs translation. These moments, though quiet, are revolutions, tiny awakenings that whisper, you are finally living, and you are. Because living is not surviving performance after performance. Living is being in such harmony with your own soul that your external life becomes a mirror, not a mask. You stop asking the world what to do next. You start asking your inner being what feels right. And the answers no longer come from noise. They rise like waves from the still ocean within. Can you feel it? That quiet, that truth, that presence within you, it's always been there, waiting beneath the applause, beneath the fear, beneath the hunger to be seen. It is the part of you that never left, the part that watches without judgment, the part that has no need to perform because it is already one with God. And what is God if not the infinite permission to be as you are? to speak from the soul, to move from the heart, to show up without disguise. God doesn't ask you to act worthy. God asks you to remember, you already are. In every breath, in every moment, in every still point of your existence. Worthiness is not something to be proven. It is something to be remembered and lived from. So stop rehearsing. Stop waiting for the perfect timing. Stop shrinking your truth to fit into someone else's idea of success. You are not here to be palatable. You are here to be powerful. Not power in dominance, but power in authenticity. The kind of power that radiates not from effort, but from presence. The power of someone who no longer needs the room to agree before speaking truth, who no longer performs love to feel loved, who no longer betrays themselves to feel safe. Safety is not in agreement. It is in alignment. And alignment comes when you are finally done negotiating your identity for the illusion of belonging. When you realize that peace does not arrive when everyone approves of you, it arrives when you approve of yourself. And that approval comes when you stop editing your soul to meet someone else's expectations. You are not here to entertain. You are here to embody. Embody truth, embody love, embody the deep silence that exists beyond the clamor of opinion. And in that embodiment, you find the paradox. You become more magnetic, more alive, more radiant than any performance could have ever offered. Because people are not moved by perfection. They are moved by presence. There is a kind of holiness in being misunderstood. When you no longer contort your truth to fit into someone else's comprehension, when you say what you feel, not to provoke, not to defend, but simply because silence would be a betrayal of the soul. In this sacred place, you no longer trade your authenticity for approval. You no longer dim your light so others can stay comfortable in the dark. You understand now that not everyone is meant to witness your becoming because some only knew how to applaud your pretending. The deeper you go into truth, the more you shed. Not just masks, but roles, attachments, even identities you once clung to as life rafts. And what you discover beneath it all is this startling simplicity. You never needed any of it. You were never lacking. You were only layered with expectations that weren't yours, burdened with shoulds that never belonged, carrying stories that had nothing to do with your spirit. And in that shedding, you do not become something new. You become what you were before the world told you who to be. This is not an escape. This is a return, a sacred homecoming to the quiet center of your being, the part that does not push, does not seek, does not grasp, the part that watches, that breathes, that knows. Here, there are no performances, only presence, no masks, only essence. And essence is not something you show, it is something you allow. It moves through you, not from effort, but from surrender. And oh, how miraculous surrender becomes when you realize it is not defeat, it is freedom. To surrender is not to give up, it is to give in to the deeper truth of what wants to move through you. To stop performing is to surrender the need to control how others see you. It is to let go of being seen and begin to see clearly, without filters, without stories, without needing the world to reflect back what you already know within. This is the birth of peace, not the peace that comes from a quiet room, but the peace that stays even when the room erupts in chaos. It is the peace of one who is no longer playing roles, but living truth. The peace of someone who no longer rushes to fill silences because they no longer fear being real. The peace of one who can say with softness and power, I am no longer performing, I am simply being. And in that being, something divine unfolds, the way a flower opens not by effort, but by light, the way a river flows not by direction, but by surrender. You begin to live in harmony with the unseen rhythm of your own soul. And that rhythm is not frantic, it is not loud, It is not designed to entertain. It is slow, steady, sacred, like breath, like prayer, like the turning of stars. People may not understand your stillness. Let them not understand. People may not like your honesty. Let them not like it. Because you did not come here to manage their feelings. You came here to liberate your soul. You came here to live with the kind of aliveness that doesn't fit into a neat little box. And sometimes that aliveness looks like silence. Sometimes it looks like tears. Sometimes it looks like dancing with no music or walking away with no explanation. And you begin to see performing was never safety. It was imprisonment. Polished words were not love, they were protection. Sacrificing your truth was not noble. It was self-abandonment. And now you choose something higher. Now you choose presence over performance, truth over safety, wholeness over approval. And in doing so, you awaken something ancient within you, the knowing that says, this is who I've always been, I just forgot. You forgot because the world rewards forgetfulness. It applauds the performance. It sells the mask. But now you remember, and that remembrance is the beginning of everything. You remember that you are not what you do. You are not what they see. You are not even who they love. You are the awareness that watches it all, the presence that animates it all, the silence beneath the sound. And in remembering this, you stop reaching. You stop rushing. You rest instead in your own being. You speak less. You listen more. You show up not as a brand, not as a personality, but as presence itself. You stop editing your laughter. You stop apologizing for your boundaries. You stop tiptoeing around your own needs. Because finally, you understand. Living is not about being agreeable, it's about being aligned. And alignment is not always convenient, but it is always holy. When you stop performing, your relationships change. Some drift. Let them drift. Some deepen. Let them deepen. Because only truth can nurture connection. Performance creates fans. Presence creates soulmates. And you're not here to be famous. You're here to be free. Free to love without fear. Free to speak without rehearsal. Free to live not in reaction, but in creation. Not as an actor in someone else's story, but as the sacred author of your own. The soul does not scream, it whispers. And it has been whispering all along. Stop pretending. Stop adjusting. Stop performing. Start living. That whisper, that ancient breath is the voice of God within you. It is not demanding. It is not condemning. It simply invites. And that invitation, once accepted, changes everything. Because when the soul leads, performance ends, and life, real life, begins. There is something sacred about a life unhurried. A life no longer racing towards some imagined arrival point, no longer grasping for approval like oxygen, no longer tied to the ticking of external clocks. You begin to feel the difference between urgency and purpose. Urgency screams, demands, contracts. Purpose whispers, invites, expands. And when you are no longer performing, you begin to hear that whisper again, soft as breath, strong as eternity, guiding you back to the rhythm of your own becoming. You no longer ask, how should I be? You ask, what is true now? You no longer calculate your words. You no longer strategize your identity. You no longer rehearse your life like a play you hope ends in applause. You show up as you are, moment to moment, breath to breath. And in that simplicity, the miraculous happens. The universe starts responding to your truth instead of your performance. Doors open that striving never touched. People appear who speak to your soul, not your persona. Paths unfold that don't require force, only presence. Because life meet you where you are honest. Not where you're impressive, not where you're polished, where you are real. And being real is a daily act of courage. To show up unmasked in a world addicted to illusions, this is the quiet revolution. This is what spiritual mastery truly is. Not floating above the world, but walking through it with such radical truth that even your silence sets people free. And you will notice that this lightness that emerges when you're no longer weighed down by performance. You laugh more deeply. You breathe more fully. You cry without shame. You no longer measure your worth in outcomes. You measure it in presence. You feel the sacred in the mundane. You find joy in the ordinary. A walk becomes meditation. A glance becomes prayer. A meal becomes communion. Because nothing is filtered through performance anymore. It is experienced directly, naked, alive. And this aliveness is your true nature. It was never gone. Just buried beneath layers of conditioning, beneath the noise of a world that told you to always do more, be more, prove more. But now you see you don't have to prove light. You are the light. Not the kind that blinds, the kind that warms, the kind that draws others in, not with intensity, but with peace. And when peace becomes your baseline, everything changes. You don't chase love, you become it. You don't beg for belonging. You belong to yourself. You don't force outcomes. You trust timing. You don't hustle for happiness. You embody joy. And all of this sacred shift begins when you stop performing. When you realize that your truth is not too much, that your feelings are not inconvenient, that your presence is not a problem to be managed, it's a miracle to be honored. You stop over-explaining. You stop apologizing for existing. You stop contorting to avoid conflict. You simply breathe fully, deeply, knowing that your aliveness is a gift, not a negotiation. And those who can meet you here, as you are, will stay, not out of obligation, but out of resonance. Because truth is magnetic, not loud, not pushy, just undeniable. And you begin to extend this grace inward to the parts of yourself that once felt unworthy. The tired parts, the angry parts, the scared parts that once wore masks just to survive. You gather them now gently, like lost children, and you say, you don't have to pretend anymore, you're safe here. I'm not abandoning you again for someone else's comfort. And just like that, healing begins. Not through effort, through embrace. Not through performance, through presence. Not through fixing, through remembering. Because you were never broken. You were just acting, playing a part that never suited your soul. And now the curtain falls, not with despair, but with liberation. The lights dim, not with shame, but with surrender. And what remains when the stage is gone, when the script is forgotten, when the applause fades, is you, real, whole, enough. There is a holiness to this return, a quiet sacredness that does not need ceremony, just stillness, just breath, just you sitting in your own presence, knowing there is nothing else to become, only something deeper to be and to remember being. And so we move onward gently, courageously, without armor. We move onward not to finish something, but to sink even deeper into the vast, silent truth that there is nothing left to chase, only more of yourself to allow. You are no longer climbing towards some ideal self. You are descending into the sacred ground of the self that always was. This is not ascent, this is embodiment. You start to see that everything you once feared, losing reputation, recognition, even relationships, was never the source of your life. They were the echoes of your performance, not the essence of your soul. And now, having shed the act, you can finally stand in the radiant stillness of your own being and say, Even if I lose what is not real, I gain what is eternal. You lose the performance. You gain the peace. You lose the illusion. You gain the intimacy. You lose the approval. You gain the self. It is here, in this space, that your healing becomes visible. Not dramatic, not theatrical, just present. You begin to walk differently, not faster, not with more purpose, but with softness, with rootedness, as though each step is a conversation with the earth. You speak with less urgency because you're no longer trying to convince. You listen with more reverence because every voice, including your own, holds a piece of the divine. The ego begins to dissolve, not because it was evil, but because it's tired. Tired of the performance, tired of pretending to be in control, tired of trying to earn what the soul already knows is unconditional, and in its place, there is a return to humility, the kind of humility that isn't small or timid, but vast and grounded. The humility of knowing you are both dust and divinity, that you are not here to impress God, but to express God. And that expression needs no polish, only permission. You no longer seek to be seen because you finally see yourself. You no longer seek to be understood because you have made peace with your own paradoxes. You no longer perform gratitude. You become it. Every moment, every breath becomes a silent thank you. Thank you for the freedom of not pretending. Thank you for the courage to be real. Thank you for the pain that cracked the shell of performance and let the truth shine through. And it will shine. Not like a spotlight, but like the slow golden light of sunrise, steady, healing, and beyond effort. You won't have to announce it. Your peace will speak. You won't have to explain it. Your energy will explain it for you. And not everyone will understand this new you, the unfiltered, unperformed, unguarded you. Some will miss the old script. Some will mourn the version of you they could control. Let them. Let them walk their path while you walk yours in truth, in presence, in love. Because now you choose truth even when it's inconvenient. You choose rest even when it's unpopular. You choose depth even when the world celebrates surface. You choose soul even when the ego protests. You choose the long path home instead of the short path to approval. And every time you choose these things, you say yes to life. Real life. Not life as performance, but life as presence. Life as breath. Life as God flowing through you, unfiltered, unedited, unhindered. And you will have moments of doubt. Of course you will. You will feel the pull to slip back into the act, especially when the silence feels too wide, too vulnerable, too unfamiliar. But you will remember, this silence is not emptiness, it is fullness. It is the sound of the soul uncloaked, the sound of God when we finally stop talking over Him. And in that silence, you will be comforted, not by the noise of validation, but by the stillness of knowing. You are not here to be understood by everyone. You are here to understand yourself. You are not here to be consumed by the crowd. You are here to commune with the truth. And you are not here to perform for love. You are here to realize that you are love. And love does not need a role to be radiant. It only needs to be released. So now you live like this, undressed of performance, uncloaked of roles. You wake with no need to prove. You walk without explanation. You speak without fear. And your life becomes a meditation. Not an escape from reality, but a deeper entrance into it. Your very presence becomes prayer. Your being becomes medicine. And without doing anything grand, you start to heal the world simply by no longer pretending. You see now, don't you? You were never too much. You were just too honest for a world that profits from performance. You were never too sensitive. You simply refused to numb what was still alive in you. You were never wrong for wanting to rest, to breathe, to be held without expectation. What the world called weakness was simply your soul choosing presence over pretending. And that presence, your presence, is now no longer something you slip into when the world isn't watching. It becomes your way of life, your baseline, your foundation. You no longer move through the world as a character, but as consciousness itself. No longer shrinking, no longer embellishing, just being, fully, freely. And in that being, you begin to attract not performances, but presence, not fans, but soul family, not transactions, but transformations. The world may never applaud your authenticity the way it claps for your performance, but your soul will. And in the quietest moments when you sit alone and breathe without needing to impress anyone, you will feel it. Peace. A kind of peace that is not earned through effort, but allowed through surrender. It wraps around you like warm light. It holds you like the arms of God. It says, without words, this is who you are. This is enough. You become the safe place you were always seeking, the refuge that doesn't require explanation, the home that welcomes every part of you, the loud, the silent, the strong, the tender. You become whole, not because you finally met the world's expectations, but because you stopped abandoning your own essence. You look back on the years of performing not with judgment, but with deep compassion. You see the younger you trying to be liked, trying to belong, trying to not disappoint. And you hold that version close, not to keep it alive, but to let it rest. To say, you did your best, but you don't have to keep pretending. We're safe now. We're free. And then you exhale deeply, fully, like someone who has carried a weight for so long they forgot they were even holding it. That exhale, that sacred breath becomes your liberation. No fanfare, no stage lights, just stillness and truth and love. You understand now, you are not here to perform life, you are here to live it. Not to become a character in someone else's story, but to walk boldly in your own. Not to repeat the script you were given, but to write your own pages in ink made of presence. You are here to love, not to entertain, to create, not to conform, to heal, not to hustle. You are not here to fit. You are here to expand. You stop asking, who do they want me to be? And start asking, who am I when I'm not performing? And the answer comes not in grand revelations, but in soft moments, in the way your shoulders drop when you don't have to explain, in the way your eyes soften when you see yourself with love, in the way you stand rooted and relaxed when you no longer need to impress. That is where life begins. Not on the stage, but off it. Not when the crowd cheers, but when the soul sighs. Not in applause, but in alignment. Life begins when you stop performing and start living fully, courageously, divinely. And so I leave you here. Not with a conclusion, but with a return. Back to your center, back to your breath, back to the presence that was never gone, only hidden beneath the roles. The performance is over. The truth remains. Live it. Live it boldly. Live it quietly. Live it fully. But above all, live it as you.
You are not what happened to you. You are what you choose to become. There is a sacred truth that waits patiently for you to hear it beneath the noise of memory, beneath the noise of pain, beneath the clutter of old stories you've told yourself again and again until they've shaped your entire identity. And that sacred truth is this: the past is not who you are. It is only who you were convinced to believe you are. We live in a world that has taught us to tether our sense of self to timelines. This is who I am, we say, pointing backward to a broken childhood, to a betrayal, to the years we were unseen, unloved, misunderstood. But there is no freedom in chaining yourself to a story that no longer serves the evolution of your soul.
The past is like a wake behind a boat, shows where you've been, but it cannot steer you forward. It has no power unless you reach back, pick it up, and place it over your face like a mask. So many souls walk this earth in suffering, not because of what happened, but because they won't let what happened stop happening. They replay it, rehearse it, reaffirm it, until it becomes a costume they wear so tightly they forget they were ever anything else. But hear me, there is something within you that was never hurt, never abandoned, never unloved, never broken, and that part of you, that divine eternal presence, is your truest identity. You are not the frightened child. You are not the failed relationship. You are not the financial loss, the addiction, the mistake, or the moment of collapse. You are not your trauma. You are not your depression. You are not the echo of someone else's inability to love you. You are the soul who survived, the breath that kept going, the consciousness that chose to keep waking up every morning, even in the dark. You are the observer of all those moments, not the moments themselves. But here's what the ego does. It tries to build a kingdom out of memory. It clings to identity because identity feels safe. Even if that identity is steeped in pain, it is still familiar. And the ego would rather have a predictable prison than an open, unknown sky. To stop using the past as your identity, you must first recognize that it was only ever a teacher, not a sculptor. It shaped moments, yes, but it was never meant to define your essence. Pain shows up in your life as a mirror, as a message, as a master, but it does not have to become your home. Imagine walking through a forest and tripping over a rock. You fall, scrape your knee, and it hurts. Do you stay on the ground for the rest of your life pointing to the stone? Do you carry that stone in your pocket forever, telling every person you meet, this rock is who I am? Or do you learn where it lay, stand up, dust yourself off, and walk on with greater awareness? When you identify with your past, you are trying to live life looking in the rearview mirror. And the soul does not move backward. The soul is always now, always forward, always present. The soul cannot even see the past unless the mind drags it there. Every time you say, this happened to me, ask yourself, but is it happening now? Most often, the answer is no. What's happening now is peace. What's happening now is silence. What's happening now is the beating of your heart and the rise and fall of your breath. What's happening now is life a new canvas, but your thoughts may still be coloring it with the old brushstrokes of yesterday. Let me remind you of something sacred. You were born whole. You came into this world not as a product of pain, but as a vessel of light. And though the world may have tried to convince you otherwise, though it may have tried to rename you with its labels and limitations, it cannot touch your essence. Not truly. Your soul is untouched by suffering. It simply witnesses. It simply learns. It simply evolves. You have the power right now to return to that essence. Not by erasing the past, but by releasing it. Not by forgetting what happened, but by refusing to allow it to narrate your present. You are the author now. You hold the pen. The chapter has ended. Why are you still rereading it when the page is blank and the ink is still wet? Forgiveness is not about saying what happened was okay. It's about saying what happened no longer owns me. It's not about them. It's about your liberation. It's about untying yourself from the anchor that's kept your soul from rising. And if you think you need closure before you move forward, let me tell you something gently, but clearly, closure is not something you get from the past. Closure is what you give yourself by no longer needing anything from it. The moment you stop waiting for an apology, for understanding, for justice, for healing from the one who hurt you, that is the moment you become free. The past is not a prophecy. It is not a verdict. It is not a prison. It is a place you passed through. And the only reason it continues to feel real is because you revisit it so often that you forget to see where you are now. Think of it like this. You are standing in a beautiful field, flowers blooming, sky open, birds singing, and yet you keep looking down at an old photograph of a storm. You keep describing the storm. You tell others about the storm. But if you would only lift your eyes, you would see that the storm has passed. Your pain was real, yes. Your heartbreak was valid. Your tears were sacred. But your spirit was always stronger than the wound. Do not let the wound become your name. You have been calling yourself by the names of your scars, but your true name is peace. Your true name is joy. Your true name is I am, not I was, not I broke, not they hurt me. Just I am. The past cannot survive in the light of full presence. Every time you step into the now, the chains fall away. Every time you choose gratitude, every time you choose stillness, every time you choose self-compassion, you are reminding yourself that this is who you are. Not the version of you who had to survive, but the version of you who now gets to thrive. The world around you may keep bringing up who you were, but you don't have to answer to that name. You can say, that was a chapter. I'm not erasing it, but I am no longer reading it. And when the mind tries to pull you back, because it will, you gently say, thank you for trying to protect me, but I am safe now. That story is over. I choose peace. You are not obligated to carry pain just because you once held it. You are not disloyal to your past by outgrowing it. You are not arrogant for choosing healing. You are brave. This world needs more souls who have dared to release the roles they were cast into and step into the freedom of presence, who have stopped introducing themselves by their wounds and started radiating their wisdom instead. The ones who no longer bleed on people who didn't cut them. The ones who turned their hurt into insight, their sorrow into depth, and their history into higher ground. You are one of those souls. You don't have to wait another moment to begin, not after the next book, not after the next apology, not after the next therapy session or healing ritual. You can begin right here by saying, I am not my story. I am the soul who observed it, who lived it, who learned from it, and who now releases it. The ego may resist. It may say, but who am I without my pain? And that is the question. That is the threshold. Because once you remove the story, what remains is truth. And truth is simple. Truth is love. Truth is breath. Truth is that you are already whole, already divine, already worthy, not because of what you've endured, but because of who you've always been beneath it all. Now breathe. Let it go. Let yourself risen not as a reaction to your past, but as a response to your soul's invitation to be free. You are not what happened to you. You are what you choose to become. And right now, in this moment, you can choose peace. You can choose to stop using the past as your identity. You can choose to come home to yourself. You can choose now, and now, and now again, because this moment, this eternal now is where your true life lives. And the past will let go of you the moment you let go of it. What would your life feel like if you woke up tomorrow with no memory of who you used to be? Not in the sense of forgetting, but in the sense of no longer carrying the emotional weight of it. What if all that remained was this moment and the fullness of being present with it? Can you imagine the lightness in your chest, the stillness in your thoughts, the soft freedom of not having to explain your pain anymore? So much of human suffering is not in the moment, it's in the remembering. And not just the remembering, but the identifying with what is remembered. A wound is not just a scar, it becomes a name tag. A mistake becomes a sentence, a betrayal becomes a worldview. You begin to see life not as it is, but as you were hurt. But the divine does not see you through the eyes of your history. The divine sees you through the eyes of your essence. It knows only the truth of who you are underneath the layers you've gathered to protect yourself. It sees the eternal flame that flickers even in your darkest hour. It whispers gently every time you're quiet enough to hear, you are not your timeline. You are timeless. Let me say this again. You are timeless. You are not the events that happened to you. You are not the age at which they happened. You are not frozen in that year, that room, that night. You are the consciousness that passed through it all and still miraculously remained. And what a miracle that is. That despite the weight, you continued to move. That despite being misunderstood, you sought to understand. That despite being unloved in some moments, you never stopped yearning to love. That's not weakness. That's divinity remembering itself through you. So how do we stop using the past as our identity? We begin by watching our thoughts without judgment, just with awareness. Every time you say, I always do this, pause. That's not your identity, that's a pattern. And patterns can be released. Every time you say, people always leave me, stop. That's not your truth, that's a wound speaking. And wounds can be healed. Every time you say, I'm just the kind of person who listened to how your words are casting a spell over your life, what you affirm becomes your reality. And if you keep affirming your pain, you will keep living inside it. Instead, begin speaking from the present truth of who you are becoming, not the ghost of who you were. Say, I am learning to stay. I am remembering that I am loved. I am discovering that I am enough. I am shedding the skin of who I was told to be. I am here now, free. This is not about spiritual bypassing. It's not about pretending the past didn't happen. It's about refusing to let it be the script that writes the rest of your life. There is a difference between acknowledging the wound and identifying as the wound. One brings wisdom, the other breeds imprisonment. What if, instead of repeating the narrative, you honored the lesson? What if, instead of saying, I was abandoned, you said, I was taught to find wholeness within? What if, instead of saying, I was betrayed, you said, I was shown where not to place my trust so I could learn to trust myself? The meaning you give to your past is the power it has over your present. You get to redefine the story not by changing what happened, but by changing what you believe it means about you. The caterpillar does not mourn the skin it shed. It does not grieve its days of crawling. It simply surrenders to the transformation. It allows the becoming. And that becoming means releasing everything that no longer serves its wings. You too are here to fly. You too are in the chrysalis of evolution. And your past, as painful as it was never meant to be your cage. It was meant to be your cocoon. Every wound held the seed of awakening. Every heartbreak cracked you open just wide enough for light to pour in. Every silence you endured trained you to hear your own voice with clarity. You do not become who you are in spite of your past. You become who you are because you chose not to be limited by it. But you must choose again and again and again, because the mind will try to pull you back. The ego will whisper, don't forget what they did. Don't trust. Don't change. Because change means ego death. And the ego would rather wear the crown of pain than risk the vulnerability of rebirth. But you are not your ego. You are the vast, infinite awareness beneath the ego. The sky, not the clouds. The ocean, not the waves. The stillness beneath the noise. When you stop identifying with the past, you begin to live from that space of stillness. And from there, every moment becomes new. Every encounter becomes sacred. Every breath becomes a doorway to the now. There is no one moment of healing. Healing is a way of being. It is the decision to show up again and again, not as the wounded self, but as the witnessing self. Not as the victim, but as the soul. And when I say soul, I mean that eternal, changeless, luminous core of you that has never been touched by trauma, that part of you that remains untouched by time, that part of you that looks through your eyes and says, I have always been here. That part of you is where the power is. And you access that part by being still, by listening, by letting go of the need to explain yourself to others, by dropping the need to be understood, because the soul is not interested in being understood, it is only interested in being aligned. Alignment is peace, alignment is presence. Alignment is saying,
I don't need to hold this pain anymore just to prove it existed. Because it did. It existed. And you survived it. Now it's time to stop surviving and begin living. It's time to stop rehearsing the story and start writing a new one. It's time to take off the mask of the past and reveal the face of your true being, radiant, calm, eternal. You do not need to convince anyone of your worth. You only need to remember it. You do not need to fix yourself. You only need to remove what was never truly you to begin with. All that shame, that's not yours. All that fear, that was learned. All that guilt, that was inherited. Let it fall. Let it drop like dead leaves in autumn. You don't have to explain why you're changing. You just have to be willing to change. You are not abandoning your past by evolving. You are honoring it by growing beyond it. The past is a chapter, not a prophecy. A footprint, not a prison. A teacher, not your name. So stand now in your fullness, in your truth, in the blazing light of your now. Feel the presence of life not as something happening to you, but as something moving through you. The past cannot enter here. The present is too powerful, too alive, too spacious. And the more you practice presence, the less room there is for old stories. The more you practice forgiveness, the lighter you become. The more you practice compassion, the less you cling. And the more you remember who you truly are, the more the illusion of the past begins to dissolve into the light. There is a space inside you that has never been wounded. A space where no betrayal can enter, no memory can stain, no fear can grow. That space is the silent witness behind all experience. And it's from that space that you are invited now to begin again, not as someone escaping the past, but as someone no longer chained to it. Imagine just for a moment that your entire life was a great stage play. Every person who hurt you, every moment of loss, every heartbreak, they were actors in your soul's theater, playing their part not to defeat you, but to awaken you. What if your suffering was never punishment, but invitation? What if it all existed not to keep you down, but to bring you to this precise threshold where you finally say, I remember now, I am not the character, I am the consciousness behind it. You do not have to keep performing the same role just because you've memorized the lines. You can walk off the stage, you can take off the costume, you can bow in gratitude for the role that taught you strength, and then walk into the next act of your life unburdened, open, whole. But to do that, you must do something radical in a world addicted to suffering. You must give yourself permission to be free. You must stop waiting for the world to release you. It won't. The people who hurt you may never admit they did. The past will never suddenly rewrite itself. The healing is not going to come from out there. It will come the moment you decide, I no longer identify with this version of myself. That's not forgetting, that's not pretending, that's reclaiming, that's awakening. That's stepping into the truth that your spirit is not a victim of time, it is a creator of it. And creation begins in this present moment. When you say, I am not my past, you are not erasing your story, you are simply shifting your authorship. You are saying, yes, that chapter shaped me, but it no longer defines me. And that is the moment everything changes. That is the moment you begin to write again with the ink of possibility rather than the blood of repetition. Let yourself change. The past may resist. Your ego may grieve. The people around you may question who you are becoming. That's okay. That's expected. When a snake sheds its skin, it doesn't explain itself to the old scales it left behind. It simply grows silently, surely, naturally. The soul is not interested in your history. It's interested in your liberation. And liberation does not come through control, through analysis, through endless digging for why. It comes through surrender, through stillness, through finally allowing yourself to be more than what hurt you. Healing isn't always loud. Sometimes it's as simple as not reacting the way you used to, as simple as choosing peace when chaos knocks, as simple as smiling when you once would have shut down. This is what the past cannot touch: your present awareness, your capacity to choose again, your ability to love anyway, to rise anyway, to forgive anyway. Forgiveness, you see, is not just a gift to others sit, is the final key you hold that unlocks the prison of your own pain. It says, I refuse to keep dragging this weight into every room I walk into. I refuse to bring old storms into new days. When you forgive, you are not saying what happened was right. You are saying, my freedom matters more than my resentment. Because resentment is heavy, bitterness is heavy, anger is heavy, and you were never meant to carry so much weight. There is a lightness in letting go. There is a purity in saying, I am no longer the person who needs this story to feel worthy. You are worthy without it, worthy without the suffering, worthy without the label, worthy without the justification. Let me say this clearly and lovingly. You don't owe anyone your suffering. You don't have to keep your pain just to prove how deep it ran. You don't have to relive your trauma just to feel valid. You don't have to stay broken just because someone once told you that was your name. You can rise quietly, gracefully, fully. You can be reborn not into someone new, but into who you've always been beneath the wounds. This is your spiritual inheritance. This is your birthright. This is the divine remembering itself through you. And yes, it takes courage. Yes, it takes stillness. Yes, it takes truth. But everything your soul longs for exists on the other side of identity, on the other side of the story. The moment you say, I choose peace instead, you realign with the essence of life itself. Because life is not interested in your resume of pain, it's interested in your ability to be here, right now, alive, awake, aware. Every morning, when you open your eyes, you are being born again. The world may be the same, but you are not. Every breath is a doorway back to now. Every heartbeat is a reminder that your essence has never been defined by circumstance. You are not what happened to you. You are what you are becoming in this very moment. You are a soul in motion, a spirit in evolution, a being of light wrapped in human form. And you are allowed to outgrow everything that once kept you small. You are allowed to stop telling the story. You are allowed to just be, to walk into a room without needing to explain your pain, to sit in silence without needing to be understood, to laugh again without guilt, to dance again without fear, to love again without protection. Because the truest healing is not in becoming someone new, it's in finally remembering who you were before the world told you to be something else. That version of you, the one beneath the stories, that is the you who is whole. That is the you who was never lost, only covered by the dust of memory. So close your eyes for a moment, breathe. And in that breath, hear the still whisper that says, you are safe now. You are whole now. You are free now. Let it echo. Let it settle into your bones. Let it replace the noise that once screamed your name in pain. Because you are no longer what happened. You are the healing that followed. You are no longer the story. You are the space it unfolded within. You are no longer the victim. You are the vast, unshakable witness. And the witness does not cling. The witness simply is. So breathe again. Smile gently. And remember, the past is a place you visited. It is not where you live. So now, take a breath, a deep, conscious breath, the kind that isn't for survival, but for remembrance. Let it move through you like a wave of light. Let it whisper to every cell in your being, you are no longer what happened. You are what you choose to be now. You see, healing doesn't mean the past vanishes. It means you no longer carry it as your name. You no longer offer it to the world as your introduction. You no longer give it the power to determine what comes next. Because what comes next is yours. Entirely, clean, unwritten, not predicted by yesterday, but shaped by your presence today. And maybe that's the greatest spiritual act of all. Not climbing a mountain, not reading another book, not waiting for a thunderbolt from heaven. Maybe it's just sitting quietly and saying to yourself, I do not need to be the person my pain made me. I can be the person my soul has always known me to be. Let the silence after that truth be your sanctuary. Let it wash over you. Let it sink in, because no matter how heavy your story has been, no matter how far back it stretches, no matter how many pages were written without your consent, the pen is in your hand now. And with it, you can write something new, not in reaction to your past, but in service to your peace. You can wake up tomorrow and no longer recite the old roles. You can meet the mirror with gentleness, not judgment. You can walk into your relationships not as the person who was wounded, but as the person who has learned to love from wholeness. You can live unburdened. And I say this not as philosophy, not as metaphor, but as deep, sacred truth. You are not your past. You never were. You are not the identity built from pain. You are not the roles you were given when you couldn't defend yourself. You are not the mask you wore to feel accepted. You are not the weight you carried to feel real. You are light. You are awareness. You are love. You are the presence that watched it all and now chooses to let it go. You are the divine wrapped in skin. And the past has served its purpose. It brought you to this threshold. It broke you just enough so that something deeper could open. It challenged you just enough so that surrender became possible. It bruised you just enough so that you'd stop running from stillness and start listening to your soul. So now, thank it. Yes, thank it. Not for what it did, but for what it revealed. Not for the pain, but for the clarity that followed. Not for the suffering, but for the seed of awakening that suffering contained. And once you've thanked it, bless it, then let it go. No need to carry what no longer helps you fly. No need to wear the old name when your spirit has outgrown it. No need to live life looking backwards when your heart only beats in one direction forward. This is the moment, right now, this breath, this stillness, this quiet miracle of being. Let it be enough. Let it be home. Because when you no longer use the past as your identity, something extraordinary happens. You remember who you've always been. And that remembrance is freedom.